It's been almost a year since Atlas appeared in our skies, at first just a distant shimmer beyond the moon. A curiosity for astronomers and night sky watchers. Most people barely noticed. I did. I was working at the observatory then, logging data, writing dry reports. But even back then, something about it felt wrong. And now, with everything that's happened, I feel like I have to tell you the truth, not the one the agencies fed the media, but what I saw, what I know. My name's Daniel K., and this is what really happened when Atlas came. They told us it was just another interstellar object. A cold rock, a cosmic fluke. Something that had drifted through the void for billions of years before wandering into our solar system by sheer gravitational luck. I remember the first time I saw it. Just a grainy time lapse on a government server I had no business accessing. Back then, it was still a whisper across deep space, a brightening pixel moving impossibly fast against a curtain of stars. They called it 3I-ATLAS. Third interstellar, detected by the ATLAS telescope network out of Chile. First spotted July 1st, 2025. I remember the date because it was the same week we buried my father. I was halfway through packing up his old lab when the alert hit SETI channels. I was one of a dozen senior technicians monitoring the SETI archive in Mountain View at the time. Mostly we just cataloged radio emissions, background radiation, solar noise, stray bursts from pulsars and quasars. Real aliens, never. But the job paid, and I liked being surrounded by signals no one else understood. Atlas was different from the start. The trajectory was wrong, too clean, too deliberate. Most interstellar objects slingshot through the system, picked up speed, and never looked back. But Atlas, it decelerated. Not by much, nothing dramatic. Just enough to get a few senior astrophysicists murmuring in private channels. A fractional drift. A deviation from the projected orbit by less than 1/1000th of a degree. A rounding error, if you weren't looking close. But someone was. And then the first burst came. Night, July 17th, 3:21 a.m. Pacific, logged as a high-frequency anomaly by an array in South Africa. 8 seconds long, narrow beam, modulated, and underneath the white noise a voice. Christopher. That was it. A single word, muffled, crooked, echoed like it was bouncing off a canyon wall. The algorithm flagged it as pareidolia, pattern-seeking hallucination in signal static. It happens all the time. People hear things, faces in clouds, words in microwave hum. But the next day, another signal came. This time from the ALMA array in Chile. Higher fidelity, 15 seconds long, same beam width, same tone. And this time, it said, "Do you remember the glass I dropped in the kitchen? You laughed so hard. You said I should have been born in a china shop." I dropped my coffee when I heard it, because that was my father's voice. And that story, I hadn't heard it since I was 7. It wasn't recorded. It wasn't public. It wasn't anywhere. It was ours. I didn't report it at first. Hell, I didn't even tell my wife. I just sat there in the lab, replaying the signal again and again, running spectral analysis, voice matching, waveform deconstruction. I used every tool we had, even some I wasn't supposed to. The results were consistent. The voice wasn't exactly my father's. Not a perfect match, but damn close. Close enough that a biometric algorithm put it at 93.4% certainty. Close enough that when I finally let it play on speakers in the lab, my coworker Rick spun around and said, "Dude, is that your dad?" I nodded. He asked if I'd dug up an old voicemail or something. I said no. I told him it came from Atlas. He laughed. Then he stopped. Then he played it again. And again. He didn't laugh after that. 3 days later, the signal changed. It wasn't just my dad anymore. Other names appeared, other voices. A woman singing a lullaby, Polish. A man reciting Bible verses in Swahili. A child whispering something that sounded like Morse code. The fragments were all over the place, unordered, unconnected, but unmistakably human. And they weren't broadcasts. They were memories. Within a week, the signals became international news. CNN called it the voice in the Comet. Fox News called it the sound of heaven. Reddit called it a hoax. Until a Norwegian archivist verified one of the voices as belonging to a man who died in 1892. A poet. His only surviving recording was etched in wax, fragmented, barely audible. Atlas had the entire stanza. Perfectly. Even the scratches in the background matched the old wax cylinder, which meant it wasn't just mimicking. It wasn't just rebroadcasting. It had the source. Somehow. By August, the object had slowed again, more noticeably, enough to prompt press conferences. NASA insisted it was still natural. A comet, they said, with a weird emission profile. Nothing more. Privately, we heard different. Infrared telescopes caught glimpses of structural symmetry, not random ice and dust, but geometry. Repeating hexagonal patterns, regular lattices, like solar panels, like lenses. The military got involved. Our access got restricted. The signals continued. And then one day, the signal said, "I remember when you cried for the first time. I was already watching." It wasn't my dad's voice this time. It was mine. That night, I went home and didn't sleep. I stayed up, headphones on, listening to the archived signals over and over. And I realized something. They weren't talking to us. They were talking through us. Like someone shuffling through old home movies. Not to comfort, to study. The object now hovers at 1.2 AU, just beyond Earth's orbit. Still moving, but slowly, deliberately. Telescopes show it's not tumbling anymore. It's rotating at a steady rate. And the signals are increasing. Faster, louder, more frequent. Not just voices now, dreams. People started reporting nightmares, shared ones. They'd wake up sobbing, hearing the voices of their dead loved ones whispering from outside their windows. Tens of thousands of identical dreams. Dates, coordinates, memories. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the signal stopped. Dead silence. For 6 hours. And when they returned, they were in our own voices. Every single person heard themselves saying things they'd never said aloud, things they'd only thought. They say Atlas has no thrust, no means of propulsion, that it shouldn't be able to move deliberately. But today, the object adjusted its trajectory, a course correction toward Earth. Not directly, just closer and slower, like a librarian stepping into the room with the next book, like someone who's done watching the footage and now wants to see it live. And tonight, my father's voice came back. He said, "I'll see you soon." I don't know how long I stared at that feed. The object, Atlas, hovered in the shadow of the moon. A dark silhouette, distant yet impossibly close, moving with a deliberation that was unmistakably intelligent. The announcement had barely settled before the internet exploded. Speculation, panic, government denials, and conspiracy theories lit up every feed. But it wasn't just the position or motion of Atlas that changed everything. It was what happened next. An audio signal, no, not just audio, a transmission, began broadcasting in tight bursts across multiple radio bands, from low VLF to microwave. It pulsed with rhythm, as if it were counting time or mimicking a heartbeat. Observatories around the world began triangulating. NASA confirmed the source. It was Atlas. And then, out of nowhere, the signal shifted frequencies and began mimicking us. At first, it was nonsensical. Echoes of old TV broadcasts, scrambled language patterns, historical presidential speeches overlaid with emergency alerts and commercial jingles from decades ago. It was like a remix of humanity. Every transmission was clearer than the last, more deliberate, more recent. And then, it spoke, not in English, not in any one human language, but something that bypassed language altogether. A synthetic voice, emotionless but heavy with meaning, that transmitted directly into the mind. People around the globe reported the same thing: images, voices, feelings, memories that weren't their own. Some experienced dreams, others hallucinations, a few complete mental breakdowns. I received the first contact in a dream. I know how that sounds. But I wasn't alone. I was in the lab, crashed out on a cot beneath the humming servers when it happened. I was walking through a field, no floating. The sky above was cracked with brilliant light, like 100 suns setting at once. And before me stood a figure. Not human, not even remotely, but somehow familiar. It showed me the earth, alive and vibrant. Then it showed me earth burning. Then it showed me earth healing, long after we were gone. When I woke up, there was blood on my pillow from a nosebleed, and my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my coffee. I wasn't the only one. Reports started coming in from astronauts on the ISS, those who hadn't yet been evacuated, claiming they were experiencing visions. Some were unresponsive. One had to be restrained. Ground control lost contact within hours. Atlas wasn't just observing. It was probing, analyzing us. And then, just as the panic started boiling over, the lights in the sky began. High above Earth, in the vacuum beyond the atmosphere, thousands of streaks began crisscrossing the orbital layer. Not meteors, not satellites, drones. microscopic in size, invisible to the naked eye, until they weren't. They caught sunlight and shimmered like glass feathers, forming lattices that moved like jellyfish tentacles. They weren't dropping down. They were weaving something around us. Within days, entire networks failed. Satellites lost telemetry or started drifting, ignoring commands. GPS went haywire. Air traffic had to be grounded in dozens of countries. The Chinese accused the US of an orbital weapons test. The US pointed the finger back. India fired warning shots into orbit. Russia prepped nukes. But none of it mattered. The net was tightening. Back at the observatory, Dr. Moreau pulled me into the server room and locked the door. Her face was pale and her voice trembled. "It's not a ship." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Atlas," she whispered, pressing her tablet to my chest. "It's not just a ship. It's a mind." I looked down. The scan she showed me was pulled from deep space radar imaging and gravity lens analysis. A three-dimensional lattice, nearly 40 kilometers long. Hollow but alive with inner structures that didn't make any engineering sense. Not symmetrical, not aerodynamic, organic. Atlas didn't move like a machine. It moved like a predator. A week passed. Atlas stayed parked in lunar orbit. The drone web in high orbit grew thicker. The UN called for emergency talks. But by then, society had started fraying at the edges. The markets collapsed. Protests turned into riots. There were suicides by the thousands. Cults exploded into existence overnight. Some worshiping the entity as a god, others claiming it was here to cleanse the earth. But then came the broadcast. Midnight UTC. Every single screen, every phone, radio, smart speaker, and billboard blinked out, replaced by a single repeating message. "Your species is in danger. Observation has ended. Reclamation begins." It was displayed in over 700 languages, even dead ones. Within minutes, the earth shook. Not metaphorically, physically. Tectonic sensors worldwide picked up coordinated seismic pulses deep beneath the Earth's crust, simultaneously, from multiple points. We thought it was a weapon. It wasn't. Dr. Moreau locked herself in the lab and started pulling ancient satellite data. She said the patterns didn't make sense unless there had been other signals from Earth's core decades ago, maybe even centuries. "What are you saying?" I asked. She looked up at me, eyes hollow. "We thought Atlas was new, that it just arrived. But it's been here, longer than our civilizations. That signal? It didn't come from Atlas. It came from Earth." "What?" "Atlas didn't find us. We woke it." I didn't understand. Not then, but I would. That night, I had the dream again. This time it was longer, and I could feel something watching me from behind the stars. Not malevolent, but not kind either. Indifferent. The way a scientist studies bacteria under glass. Atlas had been watching from afar, maybe buried in a Lagrange point or cloaked in deep space. And when we triggered something, maybe a frequency, maybe a test, maybe one too many nuclear detonations beneath the crust, it came back online. And now, it wasn't just observing. it was intervening. It started with the cities. No lights, no power. A rolling blackout that didn't match any known EMP or atmospheric interference. Then came the water disruptions. Then, the abductions. They weren't dramatic. No beam of light, no missing time. People just started disappearing, randomly, quietly, in groups. At first, it seemed like war zones or rural villages. But then it started hitting suburban areas, hospitals, prisons. All recorded by malfunctioning CCTV cameras that captured the moment before, then just static. And in the static, shapes, figures, tall, slender, no visible face, but always looking directly at the lens. Atlas wasn't alone. It had sent envoys. We locked the gates to the observatory on the 5th day after the blackout. We had power for now, off-grid solar backups, but everything else was dead. No internet, no GPS, just shortwave and line of sight. I stood on the roof that night, scanning the stars. And then I saw it. Atlas had moved. It now hung visibly above the moon's far side, bright, unblinking, massive, a floating cathedral of black steel and ancient memory. And below it, something descended. A lattice of light, like a doorway or a mouth. I realized then, this wasn't a warning. This was a harvest. And humanity wasn't the only thing being collected. I didn't sleep that night. After leaving the lab, I drove around the city aimlessly, my mind looping through possibilities, rationalizations, outright denial. I must have pulled over a dozen times just to stare up at the sky, half expecting to see Atlas burning like a second moon. But of course, it was still out there, invisible to the naked eye, its body colder than Pluto's shadow. Just a dot in deep space, silent, watching. And yet, that wasn't true, was it? It wasn't silent. It was broadcasting, not in words, not in signals, but in echoes of ourselves. The next morning, every major observatory on Earth was in full lockdown. Figuratively, and in some cases, literally. Emergency NDAs had been invoked. I wasn't even allowed to access my own data unless someone from a government liaison agency was watching over my shoulder. Things escalated quickly. More transcripts began to surface. Only they weren't transcripts anymore. They were videos. Actual files. Low-res, grainy, like they were recorded with analog equipment. But the contents were staggering. We saw ancient Egyptian rituals, filmed from angles that should have been impossible. Overhead shots, wide pans of Thebes, priests walking between monolithic statues, lifting relics. Every historian and linguist we brought in was baffled. These weren't reenactments. These were the real deal. Even more disturbing, some of the footage seemed to be from the inside of structures no one had ever explored. Tombs sealed for millennia. Places we hadn't even discovered yet. And still, it got weirder. I was asked, ordered, actually, to assist with decoding a new data set sent by Atlas. This time, it wasn't video or audio. It was raw telemetry, millions of points of sensor data encoded in an alien format. But after some cross-referencing, we realized it was measuring brain activity, human brain activity, or rather, recordings of it. It matched EEG scans from our own archives with shocking accuracy, right down to the unique waveforms of individual consciousness. Atlas had somehow captured thoughts, memories, the sensation of being human. One of the younger researchers, a neuroscience postdoc named Mila, put it best. This thing's not just watching, it's understanding. We held an emergency roundtable with international agencies. The meeting was remote, encrypted, with no recordings allowed, not even transcripts. The tension was so thick, I thought the screen would shatter under it. There was a man from the Vatican Observatory there, an old Jesuit scientist named Father Esteban, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His face was gaunt, haunted. He didn't speak until the final hour. And then he said one word: judgment. The whole meeting went dead silent. He leaned forward into the camera. Atlas is not here to attack us. Not directly. It doesn't need to. It is observing, weighing. It may be a probe, a record keeper, a messenger. We don't know. But I believe in my heart that it has watched us kill each other for thousands of years, that it has watched empires rise and fall, genocides, wars, triumphs, love, hate, all of it. And now it is compiling the evidence. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a short, nervous, dry laugh. Evidence for what? He just stared at me, the whites of his eyes yellowing with age and weariness. For whatever comes next, he said. A week passed, then another. Atlas continued its slow, impossible drift, correcting its trajectory millimeter by millimeter, its movements precise and intentional. It was like watching a predator circle just outside the firelight. And then came the day it blinked. That's what we called it anyway. One of the deep space IR telescopes, located in Chile, captured a burst. Not a flare, not heat, not light, a pattern, Morse code. Except it wasn't code, it was imagery. Pulses arranged like a flipbook animation, thousands of frames stacked together to form a message. The message was simple, a series of maps. Earth. Not as it is now, but as it was, layered like sediment. Epochs over time, ice ages, continental shifts, the rise of Homo sapiens, the formation of cities, trade routes, wars, the industrial age, satellites, the internet. It was a documentary of our existence. And then came the last few frames. Earth, cracked open like an egg. Billions of humans lying flat, eyes closed, hands folded. A shadow eclipsing the sun. A pair of massive black monoliths descending from the sky. That's when the panic began. Social media was already aflame with conspiracy theories, leaked images, blurry videos claiming to show Atlas in the sky. NASA and ESA released heavily redacted statements. The United Nations issued a vague alert urging nations not to sustain, nor overreact. Civil unrest bloomed like wildfire. And amidst it all, Atlas began to speak. Not in sound, not in language, in dreams. Sleep labs in Germany, Japan, and Brazil all reported spikes in identical dream patterns. Black oceans, faceless beings, echoing voices whispering across vast canyons. Some subjects woke up screaming, others didn't wake up at all. I saw it too, It wasn't a dream, it was a memory, but wasn't mine. I was standing on a field of glass under a violet sky. A monolith hovered above me, humming with impossible resonance. I could see the reflection of 1 billion faces in its obsidian surface. Human faces. My face. And then I saw the earth. Split. Unfolding like a flower. And inside, nothing but light. A voice whispered in my ear, not in words, but in knowing. This is your echo. This is your judgment. This is the mirror you made. I woke up gasping, blood from my nose staining the pillow. The next morning I received a call. It wasn't from NASA. It wasn't from any government agency. It was from a locked number. The voice was low, tired, urgent. They only said one thing. It's in lunar orbit. Atlas has stopped moving. We scrambled every resource we had. Every telescope turned toward the moon. And there it was. Low orbit, roughly 30 kilometers from the surface. A dark, elongated object, 12 kilometers in length, maybe more. Bristling with antennae, scars, ridges. It looked ancient, like something that had been wandering the void since before life crawled out of Earth's oceans. But the strangest thing, it wasn't alone. Trailing behind it, almost like satellites, were smaller objects, hundreds of them. Egg-shaped, matte black, no propulsion signatures, no heat, silent, like seeds, waiting. A private military contractor leaked drone footage from a classified lunar probe. They got close, too close. We saw an aperture open on the side of Atlas, like an iris dilating. The probe's feed went dead, its systems fried, its entire data stream corrupted. But one frame made it through. Just one. And in that image was the unmistakable silhouette of a human child, standing in a dark corridor, lit from behind by searing white light. She looked up at the camera and smiled. The footage from the lunar drone hit the world like a shockwave. A human child alone inside a massive alien construct, floating silently above the moon's surface. The image was grainy, almost surreal. But no one could deny its authenticity. The probe was real. The feed was real. The child was real. Questions exploded everywhere. Who was she? Why was she there? What was Atlas doing with her? And how could she even survive in a place with no atmosphere? Theories flooded social media, scientific forums, and intelligence briefings alike. Some suggested she was a hostage, a prisoner from some unknown force. Others whispered darker things, experiments, cloning, or worse, the last survivor of a vanished species. But as days passed, another truth emerged. The child was not alone. Within hours of the drone's last image, signals began emanating from the probe's trailing Atlas. They pulsed with an eerie synchronization, a kind of pulse, like a heartbeat across space, but with patterns so complex they defied easy decoding. And then came the voices. Not transmissions, not simple speech, but layered soundscapes, stitched together with snippets of human memory laughter, cries, whispered secrets all overlaid with an alien tonal structure, a melody that seemed to bypass language and speak directly to the soul. For many, it was overwhelming. Thousands reported hearing the voices in their sleep, in static on radios, even in the hum of electrical equipment. I experienced it too. In the observatory late one night, alone with the hum of machines and cold blinking consoles, I suddenly felt a weight in my chest, an inexplicable pressure, as if something was reaching inside my mind. The voice whispered, "You are not forgotten." Then came a flood of memories, mine, but also strangers. Childhood summers, moments of loss, triumphs, regrets, all washing over me in vivid detail, sometimes joyful, sometimes painful. I realized then what Atlas was doing. It wasn't just observing. It was collecting. Every fragment of humanity's collective experience, every joy and sorrow, every thought and fear, it was absorbing. Not as data, but as something alive. The drones orbiting Atlas were no longer silent. They began descending slowly in toward Earth, slipping through our magnetosphere, bypassing radar and satellites like ghosts. Governments scrambled jets and ships to intercept, but nothing could find them. The drones were intangible, phasing through detection systems, eluding all efforts to capture or destroy them. And with each passing day, more people began to vanish. Not in violent abductions, no beams or explosions. They simply ceased to exist. Families woke up to empty beds. Friends disappeared mid-conversation. Entire neighborhoods reported dozens missing with no explanation. The only clue was the lingering echo, a soft, melodic hum in the air, the faintest trace of Atlas's voice. Panic spread like wildfire. Riots erupted in cities worldwide. People barricaded themselves indoors, desperate to protect loved ones from a fate no one understood. I was pulled into a covert project with the UN Security Council, a team of scientists, engineers, linguists, and psychologists tasked with understanding Atlas's intent and, if possible, communicating back. We called it Project Echo. Our goal was simple, but terrifying: to speak with the archivist to find out what it wanted with us, and if there was any hope for humanity. But the deeper we delved, the more fragmented the picture became. One of our linguists, Dr. Yara Ishikawa, discovered that the signals weren't random. They followed patterns that matched ancient human myths, creation stories, apocalypse legends, and accounts of gods descending from the stars. Atlas isn't just collecting memories, she said. It's interpreting our myths, searching for meaning in our collective subconscious. It was as if the ship were trying to understand why we are the way we are, our capacity for love, violence, hope, and despair. But then came the cryptic transmissions fragments that didn't fit. Coordinates, dates, strange geometric symbols pulsing with encoded meaning. Dr. Ishikawa hypothesized these were warnings markers of events we had yet to understand. And then the most chilling part: a broadcast with my own voice. Clear, unmistakable. Speaking words I never said. Reciting fears I never voiced. That night, I awoke to find a message scrawled on my wall in a language I couldn't read, but somehow knew. A pattern, a symbol, a call. The archivist had spoken. And whatever came next, I feared, humanity was no longer alone in deciding its fate. The symbol on my wall was more than a message. It was a manifestation of something ancient and unfathomable. I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't meant just for me, but for all of humanity. That the shape itself was a seed, planting ideas and fears deep in our minds, growing with each day. Our Project Echo team spent endless nights trying to decode it, but the symbol mocked every attempt. Dr. Ishikawa fed it to every AI model and linguistic database we had. Nothing matched. Then she tried fractal mathematics, sacred geometry, and neural net pattern recognition. Each analysis ended the same. The symbol was a living pattern, changing every time we looked at it, almost like it was adapting to confuse us further. "This isn't a language," she whispered one night, exhaustion plain in her voice. "It's a signal, a key, or maybe a lock, a code wrapped inside a code." I stared at the projection of the symbol on the screen, a swirling black and violet fractal that shimmered with subtle inner motion. I felt like I was looking at a fragment of the universe's consciousness itself. Outside the lab, the world was unraveling. The drone network, ATLAS, had unleashed expanded faster than anyone expected. They weren't just orbiting the planet anymore. They began descending into the atmosphere, silently slipping through radar and satellite arrays like ghosts. Jets scrambled to intercept them, missiles launched only to lose contact mid-flight. Nothing could touch them. Cities woke up to find entire neighborhoods vanish overnight. No explosions, no sounds, no evidence of struggle. Just empty rooms, chairs tipped over, meals half-eaten on tables. Families screamed for their missing loved ones, but the disappearances continued. Hospitals lost entire wings of patients. Prisons emptied cells inexplicably. Governments issued curfews and martial law, but panic was spreading faster than any virus. Rumors flew. Cults worshipped Atlas as a god returning to claim its children. Others called it the harbinger of the apocalypse. On social media, videos surfaced of strange shadows moving in empty streets, flickers of light shaped like human silhouettes. The constant, eerie hum whispered on every wireless device. "You are not forgotten." We found ourselves the eye of the storm. The UN Security Council established a secret task force composed of the world's top scientists, engineers, linguists, and military advisors. Our mission was simple but harrowing. Understand what Atlas wanted and find a way to stop it if possible. I was pulled into the project as a lead astrophysicist, specializing in deep space communication signals. Our first breakthrough came when we began analyzing the raw data from the drone's transmissions. These signals weren't simple communications. They were a complex tapestry of audio, visual, and neural patterns layered over one another. When we deconstructed the layers, we discovered embedded fragments of human memories, pieces of joy, terror, hope, and despair stitched together like a cosmic quilt. Dr. Mila, our neuroscientist, hypothesized that the drones were somehow harvesting collective human consciousness, absorbing not just data, but experience. "It's as if Atlas is building a living archive of what it means to be human," she said, eyes wide with both awe and terror. One night, while I was alone in the lab, the humming voice returned, but stronger and clearer. It wasn't external anymore. It was inside my mind, speaking without words, conveying emotions directly. You are the memory, the witness, the choice. I collapsed into my chair, overwhelmed by visions flooding my brain. Ancient cities burning, children laughing, lovers parting, wars raging, and quiet moments of peace. I realized then, Atlas was not just observing history, it was judging it. Meanwhile, leaked footage from a classified lunar reconnaissance drone shocked the world. The drone had approached Atlas at perilously close range. As it neared, a massive aperture opened on the ship's side, like a giant eye peeling back. The feed cut abruptly, but before going dark, it showed a dimly lit corridor. And there, standing bathed in blinding white light, was a human child. Her face was serene, eyes shining with unnatural knowledge. She turned and smiled at the camera. The drone was never heard from again. Who was she? How had she survived in a place with no atmosphere? Was she a captive or something else? Days later, the task force began receiving new transmissions from Atlas itself, not just signals, but stories. Encoded in pulses and waves, the transmissions told tales from distant worlds, civilizations rising and falling, memories of stars born and dying, and the creation of the archivist, the consciousness behind Atlas. The archivist was no single being, but a collective intelligence born from countless civilizations who had entrusted their histories and memories to it. Its mission was to preserve, learn, and ultimately decide which civilizations were worthy to survive. Humanity's unpredictability both fascinated and horrified it. Then came the challenge. Atlas sent visions directly into the minds of those closest to it, including me. I found myself standing at the entrance to a vast labyrinth beneath the Earth's crust, glowing corridors. Strange machines humming with alien energy, walls covered in unknown glyphs. A voice echoed in my mind. Descend. Reclaim the lost knowledge. Face the truth buried beneath your world. In response, the UN authorized the formation of an elite expedition, scientists, linguists, soldiers, and engineers to descend into the labyrinth. I was chosen. The descent was harrowing. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath the crust, filled with technology so advanced it defied our understanding machines that seemed alive, capable of thought and emotion. We discovered records of previous civilizations not in human history books, ancient visitors who had shaped Earth's development long ago. And a warning carved into crystalline panels glowing with soft light. The archivist judges not only your past, but your future. What you choose now will echo for eternity. Back on the surface, disappearances escalated. More people vanished without trace. Families tore themselves apart, searching for answers. Governments collapsed under the strain. Cities burned. But the archivist's voice remained constant. You are not forgotten. As we ventured deeper into the labyrinth, we found something more terrifying: a stasis chamber. Inside, a figure suspended in a crystalline cocoon looked human but radiated an otherworldly presence. A child, a deity, or the archivist's emissary. The chamber's control panel flickered to life, projecting an image of the same symbol I'd found on my wall. and a message. The time has come. I sat in silence, staring at the playback loop on the monitor. The boy with the flute. The girl dancing in front of a fire. The slow motion of a woman weaving cloth, smiling to someone just out of frame. These weren't grainy reconstructions. They were real. High definition, perfectly preserved. I could see the wind catching in their hair, hear the insects chirping in the background. These weren't just records. They were memories. Dr. Kamara was the first to speak. How is this possible? The room was silent, except for the hum of the servers and the soft clicks of the keyboard as someone adjusted the playback angle. The footage panned, smoothly and fluidly, like the camera itself had been drifting silently through the moment, unseen, untouched. It wasn't just recording from a fixed point. It had presence. "They've been watching," I said. Kamara turned toward me. "Who?" I pointed to the object still drifting silently beyond the moon, larger now in the infrared. "Atlas. It's not just a ship. It's a witness." The implication settled in the room like a sudden frost. These recordings weren't simulations. They were live captures from thousands of years ago, from before we had history, from before we knew ourselves. Someone cleared their throat behind me. It was Dr. Shevchenko. The metadata tags, they're labeled in a base 12 glyph system. We've started to decode them. Timestamps, coordinates, species classifications. I leaned forward. "Species?" She nodded. "Not all the recordings are of humans." We fast-forwarded through the clips. The scenes jumped. Some of deserts with twin suns, some of bioluminescent oceans, and others of colossal beasts walking through red forests. Worlds not our own, lives not our own, but filmed the same way, with the same still reverence. Whoever made Atlas, it seemed, had been watching intelligent life across the galaxy, archiving, cataloging, preserving. And now it was here. Hours later, the UN Emergency Assembly broadcast live to the world. The Secretary General stood stiffly at the podium, his voice shaking as he delivered the address. "We have made contact with an intelligence, or artifact, which appears to predate human civilization. It is not a weapon. It has not made demands. It has made no threats. But what it carries is a mirror to our entire existence." He paused, eyes flickering to someone off camera. The object, codenamed Atlas, is broadcasting a sequence of messages and images, which include accurate recordings of human events prior to any known history. This includes cultural rituals, extinct fauna, and even extinct hominids. We believe it has been observing Earth for at least 50,000 years. Twitter imploded within minutes. #AtlasTruth trended globally alongside #We Were Never Alone and #They Were Here First. But more disturbing than the footage was the pattern behind it. The recordings weren't chronological. They were curated. Stories, moments, triumph, sacrifice, birth, war, love. Each video was a piece of a grand mosaic. Someone, or something, was building a narrative. Back at the lab, our linguistics AI finally made progress. The symbol repeated at the end of each transmission, once thought to be a signature, was now understood as a question. Dr. Kamara spoke it aloud, her voice cracking. What will you leave behind? A cold silence fell again. That was the question Atlas had been asking across time and space, of every species it observed, of every civilization. What will you leave behind? We watched in stunned silence as the next reel began. A city, modern, familiar. It was us. Footage from Earth, present day, surveillance level clarity. Except no satellites had this vantage point. No drone could move so seamlessly, silently, undetected. It was as though Atlas had been filming us in real time, from orbit, long before we even noticed it. A woman arguing with a man on a balcony. A child drawing chalk figures on a sidewalk. A protest in Istanbul. A wildfire in California. A funeral in Tokyo. No narration, no judgment, just observation. Kamara stood slowly, her voice thin. It's not just showing us who we were, it's documenting who we are. And then the feed cut. A single word replaced the image. Finality. The AI translated it across every major language. The connotation was clear. It was closing the file. Panic spread quickly after that. Governments denied it, of course. They tried to calm the public, telling us that Atlas was only a passive recorder, a historical observer. But fear has a way of spreading faster than facts. Social media flooded with conspiracies. Cults sprang up within days, some worshiping Atlas, others fearing it as Judgment Day. Satellite dishes pointed skyward. Every observatory on Earth was watching. And then, without warning, the object shifted. Its orbit decayed slowly, deliberately, as if descending, as if choosing. It stopped in geostationary orbit directly above Earth's oldest known settlement, Göbekli Tepe. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The birthplace of memory. We were given access to one final transmission. It played like a requiem, a crescendo of humanity's greatest moments and darkest sins. Hiroshima, the moon landing, the birth of a child in an African village, the first image of a black hole, a lynching, a marriage, an extinction. Then silence. Then stars. The view zoomed out until Earth was just a pale blue dot. And the screen faded to black. People across the world stared into their devices, unsure of what they had just witnessed. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was final. And yet Atlas remained above us, watching, waiting, not as a judge, but as a witness to the question it had asked 1,000 worlds before us. What will we leave behind? The world held its breath. Every screen, every broadcast, every feed now focused on the alien monolith in orbit above the moon. Atlas, once dismissed as an odd celestial object, now hovered like an artificial god, staring down at humanity with unknowable intent. Dr. Lena Rowe stood in the central operations room of the Deep Sky Observatory. Around her, analysts decoded the last of the audio-visual messages. It had taken weeks to understand the pattern, but now it was undeniable. The ship had been watching Earth for tens of thousands of years, silently recording civilizations rise and fall. Individuals live and die, a cosmic witness to humanity's story. And now it was broadcasting it all back. Every night, the skies pulsed with ghostly images. A child laughing in a Mesopotamian village. A Mongol warband storming a fortress. A dying woman whispering a prayer in ancient Gaelic. all perfectly reconstructed, holographic and vast, cast from orbit in impossible clarity across the clouds. The story shimmered in every time zone, a global memory played for the world to see. Some found it beautiful, others found it terrifying. As Lena watched one such projection, a Roman philosopher pleading with an unseen executioner, she whispered, "It's trying to show us something, not just history, meaning." Then, for the first time, Atlas spoke. Not in human language, but in a cascade of frequency bands, layered harmonics that reverberated in bone and soul. With the help of AI systems and translation models, a crude understanding formed. "We have observed your pattern. You are at the threshold. What you do next defines your permanence." Across the globe, chaos followed. Protests, religious awakenings, panics, peace treaties, political reshufflings. Entire societies paused to reconsider their trajectory. Was this a test, a threat, a call to evolve? But the ship gave no further answers. It waited. And then, on the equinox, precisely 3 months after its full reveal, Atlas sent a final message. This time, it didn't speak in words or holograms. It opened. From its dark core, thousands of thin, silver slivers spread outward, forming a vast, petal-like array. A single object, no larger than a shuttle, detached and began a slow descent to Earth. Panic erupted. Militaries locked on. Missiles were armed. But Lena pleaded for calm. "It's not an attack. It's an emissary." She was right. The object landed without a sound in a remote desert in Mongolia. Within hours, a delegation, including Lena, was flown in. The vessel was seamless, shaped like a teardrop, humming faintly. It opened for her. Inside, a room, no controls, no crew, just light and a voice. It told her what Atlas had been. A seed ship, a watcher of sentient life. One of millions dispatched by an ancient species that had long since ascended beyond the physical. It had no weapons, no soldiers, only memories and questions. "You are not alone," the voice said. "You were never alone." And then it gave her a gift, a library of data. The knowledge of hundreds of civilizations across the stars. Mathematics, music, history, philosophy. Proof that not only had others lived, but that many had survived. Returned to the world, Lena brought with her a message. We are being invited to join the cosmic conversation, not by proving our dominance, but by proving our wisdom. Atlas remained for 1 more month, silent, watching. And then, as gently as it came, it folded in on itself, vanished into subspace, and was gone. But it left a changed Earth. Borders softened, nations cooperated, science surged, wars were reevaluated, stories ancient and new were now honored. Because someone, something, had been listening. And now, humanity knew. They had an audience,